Sweet. Okay, so we're recording now. Thanks everybody for being on. And so, again, if you would just stay muted as much as you can, unless you have something to share, then we'll share. And then one thing I think that'll be really helpful. So this conversation is going to be all about summer events and kind of what the plan is for anybody who's catching this later. Today is Monday, April 20th. So today's April 20th, a Monday. And so we're still trying to figure out, we're all kind of just figuring this out. So, sorry, I'm going to get some more people in here. So here's what I'm going to do. If you would, when you share, like, just kind of share your name and then, let's just go with what city and state you're in, because I think that's part of this conversation that's a little bit unique. One of the things that we've talked about is how some of this summer stuff might look different per region of the country. And so, we'll just kind of open it up and I'm going to ask, where did he go? Joel Higginbotham, are you on here, bro? Saw your face just a second ago. Where are you at, dude?
I'm here.
There he is. I'm just going to have you start us off, bro, because I know you're in East Michigan.
Yep.
Just share a little bit about where you're at. This call might be a little bit more clunky than other calls just because it's a lot more thinking than it is kind of like, hey, we're doing this. Hey, we're doing this. So Joel, why don't you give us kind of like a minute or two of like where you're at and then kind of what you're thinking.
Okay. I'm Pastor Joel from Lakeport, Michigan. We're in the Thumb. We are right now, I'm looking at what is happening for the summer. I know for my ministry itself, we're going to be focusing a lot more on get-together events than we normally do. Usually up here in Michigan, because of the weather that we have through the winter months, during the summer months, everybody's got stuff going on, so it becomes hard to do ministry during the summer usually. But this year, we're going to focus a lot harder on the get-together events, just hanging out, bonfires and stuff like that. As far as camp goes, I honestly have absolutely no idea what we're doing.
Okay.
I have no idea what's going on. I volunteered to be the camp director for our local Westland camp, to lead team camp, and the camp director of that campground, and I have not made a decision yet. We're looking to make a decision before April 30th. So I was looking to get some ideas from everybody here today. Okay,
so that actually really, really helps me with directing this conversation. So if you're a camp director, we want to hear from you first. Thank you, Joel, for kind of bringing that up. That's what I called on you, bro. I knew you'd tell me what to do.
My campground director is actually going to be joining this call here in a little while. He said he was running late, but he should be, cool. He was wanting to hear what everybody else is doing as well.
So you guys are East Michigan, and right now you guys are in a holding pattern till the end of the month, basically. Is that kind of the short version? Okay. Somebody else who's a camp director, share where you're at and kind of what you're thinking. Just somebody jump in. I see lots of hands going.
Hi, this is my name is Angela Spangler, and I'm actually in Fairmount Camp, which is another Wesleyan church. And so I run that particular campground, and we are
in Indiana, right?
Correct. Sorry. Yep. Indiana.
You're great.
And so we're also kind of in that holding pattern. We're waiting to, I've talked to the state. I have talked to more people than I can begin to even keep up with these days. And a lot of other camps in this particular county, we're kind of in the holding pattern. May 1st seems to be this magical day when we think all answers are going to rain down from heaven as to what it is we're supposed to do. Magic's supposed to happen on May 1st, though, because that seems to be the day that everyone is banking on. I don't know what will be clearer that day, but that seems to be where we're at. The more I talk to people, and what seems to be happening in the landscape is that people are rescheduling most of their June camps. And that is pretty common across the board. If they're having camp at all, which more and more are announcing that they're canceling those. But for those of us that are still kind of waiting out, it's pretty certain that June camps probably will not be able to hold, and that we'll try to either shorten them and move them into July if possible, or change them into weekend camps that we can host on the weekends after school is back in session. So
great. Thank you, Angela, for that. Matthew, I saw your hand up, bro. You're out, and tell everybody where you're at and what y'all are thinking right now.
Yeah, I'm in the Penn York district. I direct the Penn York South Camp, and I don't have any of our north guys here, so I'll do it for both. Our district's weird because we are both New York and Pennsylvania. So we have two different state regulations we're trying to juggle for everything.
Can you help everybody
but-
with which part of New York? Because I think that's important to this conversation too, because New York City is technically in the Northeast district.
Yeah,
So you guys
we are central New York.
got it. Thank you.
But pretty much the way we were feeling on everything, we decided to shut down all of our camps. We thought there may be a hope we could hold the camps, but we did not see anything realistic for our local churches to be able to fundraise and to be able to get registration to make sustainable camps. And basically we looked at the decision, we could go by faith and have a camp and maybe really good, but we were going to bankrupt our district youth and next gen budgets if we did that.
Gotcha.
And so we decided to close camp, and we're going to take the money that would have been for camp, just our district allotment, and we're going to host a weekend camp. We're hoping late August, if everything keeps working out, or it'll be early fall, and just make that free. We need to just bless the teens and get as many there as possible for that. But also in our regular camp time, we're going to pre-record a bunch of rallies, and we're going to blast them out to all the youth groups in the district and give them special instructions like, hey, this is rally 1. After rally 1, book your youth group to go bowling. We're just making the presumption that hopefully minor entertainment will be available by then, and we should be, at least for our area, and you can gather at least 50 people area of those federal regulations. And even if it's not, we're like, this rally to instruction thing, we can modify to wherever we are to at least have something.
Okay, so just so that I'm making sure I'm hearing, you guys have said no to summer camp. And do you guys have a kids camp in that in those districts?
We have,
right?
Yeah, we have a North and South kids camp, North and South teen camp, and a discipleship camp. The 4 main camps are completely canceled. D camp has restructured themselves to be online.
Okay. And then basically what you're saying, we're going to push to the fall, do something unique in the fall, but still for the summer, record some sessions and then try to push it local to say, hey, watch this and maybe go bowling or do the, like, depending obviously, which is very mobile and that can shift very quickly depending on what the guidelines are. Awesome.
Yeah, pretty much. And that one's very in flux right now. It was last Thursday, we had the meeting to decide we are doing this, and we have the main plan of 3 rallies, and we'll give instructions to the youth group. We haven't figured out anything else yet.
Great. Selena, what's happening down in North Carolina? Do you guys, you're the one that I see from, if someone else is from North Carolina and I'm missing you, my fault.
I was looking too, and I didn't see anybody else. We are kind of on hold. Of course, East District and West District share the campground. So the camps all start in June. There may even be one at the end of May. I don't think so. I think they all start in June. So trying to figure out if we have to move June dates. Do we just move those to the end of August? Do we move everything back? Are we going to be able to do this at all? We're still in that holding pattern too, actually. And our kids camp, we are dependent. West District is dependent on a different campground for that one.
Okay.
They've closed all of their camps, so we're waiting to see if we will even be allowed to have camp. But we are starting discussions on what other things could look like if we can't have them.
Awesome. Thank you. That's super helpful. Somebody else who's either directing a kids camp or youth camp or Brent, I see your hand, bro. What's up?
I'm in Delaware, part of the Chesapeake District. We do Delaware, Maryland, all of Maryland, and a little bit northern part of Virginia, DC area. We haven't made any final decisions on our camps. We have a kids camp in June. We've kind of made a decision that basically is not going to happen because if kids go back to school, they haven't decided yet. They'll possibly be there through the end of June. So that takes that one out. We'll talk about moving that one to August. Our teen camp, we do 2 weeks, a middle school week and a high school week. We've at least made a decision that it's not public, but
right,
probably 1 week because we know that registration will probably be down. And most likely, again, if we have camp, we may do what Matthew was talking about, just do some online stuff like we're doing for church right now and push
Okay.
that out. So that's kind of where we are. Again, no final decisions in the Chesapeake from
Do
us.
you have any instinct when you guys might be making a decision?
No.
Okay. And then I should have been at and then just by a show of hands, this might be really helpful. Who is working in tandem with their district superintendent to make this decision? For those of you that do district camps, can you just raise your hand so I can kind of get a feel for kind of who's working that? Sorry, I'm having to flip through some screen. That's super helpful. Awesome. Thanks, Tara. Perfect. Okay, that's super helpful. Is there any, and this is not accountability, this is just curiosity. Is there anyone who has flexibility that they're kind of making this decision on their own uniquely? Paula, Matt, Angela, Nate. Great. Okay, that's super helpful. That just helps me kind of get a feel of like where we're at in those decision-making processes too. I've heard that many, if not most, district conferences have already been canceled, I believe. I was told to use the words many and most and not all. So so many and most is what I've heard, just in case something changes with some folks. Somebody else who's leading. Yeah, Matt, go for it, bro.
I'm from the Maine area, and we have Camp Riverside. We attract people from Maine and New Brunswick, Canada. And our biggest thing, like, we're still planning it, but we haven't canceled yet. There's a lot of expectations that we're trying to figure out. Like, we rely on summer teams for counselors, and we don't know all the schools that are coming.
Exactly.
I haven't got the word back from the ones that we're getting yet.
Mm-hmm.
And they just sent out an email, one of them, like, what's your final date? Decide if you're doing it or not. And the border plays a lot in that too, because they closed the Canadian border. So some of our campers that signed up from there can't come over, one of our speakers is living in Canada. So we're kind of playing it by ear, seeing when they open that up and stuff. I think if we make a decision, we'll probably make it by the end of May.
End of May?
Yeah, the end of
Got
May.
it. Okay.
Because it's not, we're not until like mid-July for camp.
Gotcha.
And so
yep. Makes total
a
sense.
lot could
I'm
change.
just making sure I heard you.
Yeah, a lot could change in that time. So we don't want to close it too early, but we still up in our area. We don't have a lot of it's not as, I guess we don't have a lot of cases in our area. There's like 2 in a big county that we live in. And so it's kind of like we're a little closed off from the world, trying to figure out how everybody else is experiencing it and stuff. But I'm not the only one who makes a decision. It's a small board that we have for the camp.
Right.
We'll make that decision and stuff, but that's kind of where we're at. I was kind of on here just to see where everybody else is on that too.
Yeah, this is really helpful. Thanks everybody for sharing. Somebody else, this has been really helpful so far for sure. Somebody else who's leading a camp, leading a VBS, somebody. Sorry, if you're raising your hand, I don't see you. Just start talking.
Hey, Zach.
Mike.
Oh, go ahead, Tara. You're good.
Wait. Okay. I am the Mountain Plains District. So I am actually in Texas myself. And our kids camp, we have actually canceled, but it was scheduled for June. And so we just decided to cancel that one completely. And what we're hoping to do is like a day camp in late July or August, or like a VBS across the different states, or something like that to kind of make up for it. But that one's completely gone. The youth camp has not been canceled as of yet. It's actually scheduled for July 12th, I think, or 14th.
Okay.
So we still have that one in place, and actually put a deposit down recently to hold it.
Okay.
But we haven't started accepting registration from the students. So it's
Where
kind
is
of
that youth camp held?
It's going to be in Texas.
In Texas,
at
okay.
Lakeland Springs.
Great.
And so it was kind of like, let's put a deposit down so we hold our space, because all of the June camps got canceled.
And they're going to try to,
Right. So we held our space in July, but then we haven't started asking the churches to send in registrations or anything, because we're still kind of like Angela was saying with the May 1st. We're trying to wait for that May 1st bombshell to drop to see if we truly want to go forth with it.
Thanks. That's awesome. Thanks, Tara. That's great. Awesome. That's so helpful. Mike Oliver, Florida.
Yo, Florida.
Sunny.
Yeah. No, it's really raining right now.
Stop. Don't even go there. I'm going to get real sad real quick. I'm just kidding. What's up, man?
Yeah, nothing much. Yeah,
Oh,
we're kind of.
side note, totally not to derail the conversation, but just planted a new church during a pandemic. Super casual. What's up, man?
Not much.
That's
Yeah, yeah, just a little bit busy, but we're kind of in that same holding pattern. I know everyone said May 1st as well. Our district board doesn't want us making any decisions, no deposits or anything before until we go through them when it comes to putting deposits down for the board. I know personally we're leaning towards postponing or canceling. The issue is a lot of times we have kids camp and teen camp the same week since we're not that big of a district. And on the financial side, we kind of support each other, and it would benefit I guess it would benefit us a little bit more if we did cancel it, just because of registrations and not being able to get together. We are thinking on weekend retreats and doing multiple weekend retreats. September and December
Gotcha.
was the thought process that we're thinking about. It lowers the cost and it gives a little bit more time to fundraise and churches to get back together in order
Right.
to fundraise, and then get a running start into the following year.
Great. That's great, man. Thank you. Somebody else, Steve Martin. I'm just basically whoever's kind of like a camp director-ish role, just kind of sharing where they're at. So we're not really doing ideas right now as much as it's just like, hey, tell us kind of what your district is thinking with either youth camp, kids camp, wherever you're at, man. And tell everybody where you're at too, if you would.
So I am in Buffalo, Wyoming, and I'm the youth camp director for the Northwest District. So both the mid-high and senior high camps, and then one of the other pastors on staff does our kids camp. So kind of all the directors are here in-house. As of right now, we have not canceled our camps. Our district conference has been canceled, which corresponds with a summer retreat as well, but the summer retreat is Cedar Canyon Camps, our campground.
Right.
It's their thing. So, and I know that the camp is going to proceed with trying to have events, no matter what they look like, more than likely pared down. So we've been meeting, our district youth pastors have been getting together, and so right now it's like we're still moving forward, we're still preparing. The registrations are open, but I've told district pastors, you can register students, I just wouldn't collect money, I wouldn't deposit money yet, but we're probably leaning towards they will probably eventually get canceled, and we could talk reasons for that, but we're holding out a little bit of hope just to kind of see, because our areas are supposed to kind of peak the beginning of May, and so restrictions might lighten here in the next month. And if so, we can at least maybe, because if we could put 100 students, on, okay, well, maybe we do it, and maybe it's just a pared down thing. We'll lose some of our churches in our district because they need, some of our Sioux Falls churches need to know by the end of the month, beginning of May, whether or not they can be all in or not, because they've got travel costs,
right?
Buses and logistical things that some of us who are closer don't. So that's where we're at right now. We are still live, still hoping for ministry teams, things like that. But I'm just I'm in talk with our district superintendent and things like that, just trying to go day by day, week by week, and as we get a little closer, make a final decision. So
awesome. Somebody else just go ahead and jump in. If I don't see you wave your hand, that's totally cool. Just unmute and go for it.
So I'm Linda Finley from Easton. First Wesleyan in Easton, Maryland. And we are canceling our sports camp. It would have been our Vacation Bible School, and it would have happened the 4th week of June. And so in canceling it, we're hoping to move it to August. Depending on when it goes back, it'll either be the end of August or middle is our hope. And
Right.
we don't know. As far as the camps go, I'm with Brent in Chesapeake District, and the camp got a message last week that said to go ahead and register for camps, which surprised me. I'm a little nervous of what would the repercussion would be if we have to refund money and the percentage that we would lose for the credit card payment. But other than that, and that's why we also closed our sports camp quickly, because they do pay a fee to come, and I don't want to have to eat all those fees from credit cards. So
yeah. If everybody could do me a favor, if you are a leader of one of those camps, because this obviously probably isn't going to be the last time we're going to need to brainstorm and have some collaborative conversation stuff around this stuff. If you would, could you just jump in the chat and drop your email address in the chat? Because that'll just help streamline some communication. I know I have a bunch of your stuff already, but that would just, even if you're like, hey, I know you have my stuff, please go ahead and do that. Because what we'll do is Kristen will pull the chat from this, and then we'll be able to know exactly, because some of you, I know I don't have your info, so this will be really helpful to kind of work on that. So a couple themes that I'm hearing is people are trying to hold off when we can hold off. It seems that there seems to be some significant risk with June. It sounds like, especially people are early June, it sounds like those are a lot of where the cancellations have been. July, people are holding on a little bit. Sounds like there's a lot of strategy around just new strategy of like, okay, if we can't do this, what can we do later in the fall, or what can we do in the summer, unique, but then try something more of a gathering in the fall. Charlie, I saw you were on here. I know that you talked to some folks outside of the Wesleyan world with camp stuff. Basically, what I've asked everybody who's kind of like leading camp direct stuff, just kind of give us like, what are you hearing? Where are you at type of a deal?
A lot of camps, music festivals have either postponed or canceled for June.
Mm-hmm.
And we've gotten a lot of those.
Okay.
There's some uniquenesses as far as the hope piece, where people are hoping that certain states that will be at level 1 by May and level 2 by sometime in June. And so they're holding out that they might be able to have a camp, but it's the financial implications that I think Melinda talked about that are so devastating right now.
Yeah.
And the legal implications with the risk management, that if they have an event on their camp, on their facility, in their facility, what does that mean? Because that's waters that have never been tread before with this kind of situation. The good news is, like, people are trying to figure out, for example, like that's what we're doing. We're because of our studio and live stream capabilities, we're trying to put together options that, for example, I don't see Amber Livermore on here from Indiana South, but they've already, I believe, canceled their camp for this summer. What happens if we used our resources to help them do a virtual camp from the IW studio, which we can now because she can pre-record, we can produce it and run it and present it. And so a lot of people are trying to figure that piece of the puzzle out. So for us, my whole life in 30 years has been youth ministry. Well, for the last 15 at IW, it's how do we resource camps? How do we send them summer teams, and all of that kind of stuff. So maybe if we can't send a team in June or July, everybody can use our resources and our studio and our facilities to figure things out to do something virtual. So a lot of that happening. A lot of people trying to figure out how to do it a day event or a night event, either virtually or maybe even on their site if they can't go to a camp location,
Right.
could they do a one-day event at their church where there's nobody spending the night overnight? Of course,
Right.
it has to do the conversation with Student Leadership University was that has a lot to do with, does the government allow a gathering under level 1? I don't believe that would work, but under level 2 of the government plan, that would allow for a gathering of several hundred.
Right.
And so what happens if there were a one day? I know of one organization that is trying to get rid of their whole 3-day event, but try to keep a one night.
Right.
Big ticket up in Michigan, is generally a 10,000 plus. They've moved it to September, while several other large festivals simply canceled.
Right.
And so that's what I'm hearing, and that's the information we're getting.
Thanks, man. That's super helpful. A couple things that you said that I think are just helpful to re-communicate to make sure everybody's hearing, because I know we're all like, these are those times, and this is why I've been loving doing these calls with everyone, because this is the kind of level of collaboration we need to continue post-pandemic. But a couple things that you mentioned, Charlie, were just some of the risk management things that we need to be proactively thinking about. So and I know everyone is, but I just want to say a couple of these things out loud, is if we are thinking about our July camps, now is the time to be thinking and looking at the phase 1, phase 2, and already be anticipating how camp could be different if it's going to happen. The other thing, and I was actually on a couple calls last week talking through this, that again, I know we all are thinking this, but I think it's sometimes helpful to hear somebody else say it, is part of what we're dealing with isn't just a practical implication of, are we doing camp? We're dealing with the emotional trauma of families living through a pandemic, and will they actually send their kid to camp? And so that's one of the things I think we need to make sure that we're kind of processing with some folks, is this reality that, like, even if we hit a phase 2 and we can have camp, what does camp need to look like differently in our area? Is it the most, even though we might have hit threshold, is it the most responsible thing? Please don't hear that. Like, those of you who know me really, really well, you know that I don't really like passive aggressively do things. So there's no passive aggressiveness. Like, I don't think we should do it if you're in phase 2. There's none of that in my voice. But what I am saying is, I think we have to be able to shepherd well to go, what risks are we taking on? What risks can we mitigate? What best practices do we need to do? And again, the reason I wanted to make sure I got everybody's emails on this stuff is that we can continue to have those conversations, the deeper in the weeds that we get for some of us who continue to have these things. Because I do think it's going to be some regional aspects in that. But I'm going to shut up now and just kind of open it up for anybody who kind of might have a question of their own that they're thinking or wondering right now. Like, is there, like, we've kind of got the lay of the land now. But anybody who kind of came to the call going like, man, I'm just wondering.
So one of the things that we're trying to think through here is prioritizing what matters to our people. Because I'm starting to hear our school district is changing our graduation. So at first I heard our commencements are canceled. Then I learned today our community is going to have commencement at the end of July. During when we go to camp, and there'll be prom the same week. So the district is making prom and commencement the same week. So there's part of me that feels, okay, even if we were to go to a last week of July camp, do I want to be in direct competition to things that we've missed out on because of this that are going on in our community? Are my resources better spent supporting that? And I'm kind of leaning that way.
Interesting. Yeah.
So that's one of the tensions I'm feeling.
That's a helpful perspective.
And we're in Michigan, by the way. So.
Yeah, Brent, go for it, bro. Yeah, anybody who, this is like, anybody who wants to talk, go for it.
Okay.
Go for it.
Again, I'm in Chesapeake, and one of the things that I'm worried about is the deal with the state of Maryland is really strict on we have a large camp, multiple days, 10 days total combined. So they really strict on our rules. And so my concern is with the COVID-19 going back, even if we're at whatever, phase 1, phase 2, all the things that we're going to have to do, take people's temperature, daily check. Is anybody else dealing with that kind of thing? Or is it even worth doing all that stuff, or are we gonna have to purchase all the equipment to do that? Is anybody else dealing with that anywhere else besides over here?
Yeah, I talked to one of our nurses about that, just wondering what logistic things would be. And she basically said, unless you're going to make people pay extra to get shipped home, there's next to no point doing it. Because if you go in, you have to go all in, which means getting the kids home as soon as they get a fever. Is like, there's no checking to see what it is. If they have a symptom, you got to send them back. And dealing with all that. And they're like, more likely than not, you're not just sending them back, you're sending their whole cabin back, which if you have a summer team counselor means you have to send that whole summer team. And they're like, once you start getting into that tangled web, it falls apart your whole camp real quick to make it. It's just easier and probably more worth your financial while to just cancel, which that was a really sobering conversation.
Yeah, it's crazy. Thanks for sharing that perspective, Matthew. That really helps.
Jessica, I think I saw you unmute a little bit earlier. It's great to see you.
Yeah, I was just kind of what Nate was saying. I was talking with a couple of the youth pastors here in Marion about just like what summer plans are, some stuff that we were working on together. And I guess one of the things we're trying to figure out is knowing that a lot of states are going to be looking towards using July to start trying to put more things in. We're just hesitant about, on the one hand, we know people are going to want to see each other and start doing more, but on the other hand, are we as pastors going to be overloading them with too much, trying to squeeze everything into that 1 month? Like all programming is all now in July, June's potentially out the window, August school starts, so we're just trying to kind of figure out what the line is for ministering well, but also not overloading them in that one short month. So
one thing that I've heard some people talk about is like, what is unique that the church can only do versus what does the community do? Like that might be some framework for us to consider, is like, what is, and I think it can vary per church, right? Like your church carries a unique voice in your community. So what is that's only unique to you? And that's something that you can provide, shift, mold, you know what I mean? Like that's one way to kind of process it, because there is something unique that each of our churches just we uniquely carry. So somebody else, another question, comment, anything?
So I'm in South Carolina, and so we're in the same boat as everyone else, waiting for May 1st to make a call on stuff. And so I'm wondering, what pieces of information are you all looking for to make a decision one way or the other? Because we're just waiting for this magical date, but like when it comes, what are we gonna, okay, we heard this, so we're gonna do this. Does anyone have any
Great
thoughts?
question, bro. That's such a good question, man.
For me, I know, I mean, I see Shammy on here and stuff, so it's like there are certain things that might actually end it for us, and that would be, let's say ministry teams can't come out, or there's a piece, or speakers or something. There's a piece that may just determine for us that, okay, we're going to go ahead and stop. Where I'm really wrestling is through the balance of the fact that I know our students, like, they're going to be soft, and they're going to be ready, and they're going to be willing, and they're going to be excited if they can, and if parents would let them. So you're kind of balancing the fact that this is an incredible opportunity for ministry versus, is it worth it? Like, and on all the other levels, it's obviously worth it for the kingdom, but is it worth it to actually go through with it? Or can we achieve the same thing with the soft heart in another form? So it's not even so, like, I'm just wrestling between those right now, because we know camp is effective. We know it's a good ministry. We do it really, really well. And if we have to nix that to go back to the drawing board, that's going to be challenging. So I think I'm kind of just holding out for that, unless something steps in where I can just say it's over, for this year.
I know
For us, the whole thing was hearing back from some of our youth pastors. Like one youth group that was going to bring about 25 kids is urban for us, and they needed that fundraising window. And once they saw churches closed, they lost that fundraising window. That knocked out a huge chunk of our camp. That just made us look as like, I don't think we can sustain it. And then we had 2 more youth pastors call and say they're going to have the same issue. They wouldn't be able to fundraise to bring their students. And it was like, there's no way we financially responsibly could hold our camp. And it sucks for maybe we could have gotten a 30-person camp going, but we have to be good stewards, which is part of this.
That camp director that is the campground director for the camp that we do our thing on, he joined the call. JT, as a campground director, what are some of the things you're hearing conversations from that angle, where you have different kinds of things that you're like the different certifications that you have to have in place, the different stuff you're hearing from the state and what the state is recommending and all that. What are you hearing?
Okay, so far, my name is JT from West Woods Camp, the director there. And so far, we're not hearing much from the state. The state licensing did send us a letter, but there wasn't much in there. Just basically, they were going to have to wait and hear what the state is going to do and what the local health department is going to do in regards to letting us open and how we're going to be able to run camps. However, I have heard a lot through the 3CA, and so I've been on these webinars with other camp directors who are executive directors of a camp, and some of them have already shut their whole camp down for the whole summer. Some of them said we have cash reserves, we're going forward no matter what, and then most people are just waiting, just like everybody here is just waiting to see what our governor and things are going to do in regards to the shutdowns and the restrictions that will be placed on there. But in listening to those other directors, I did hear a lot of information that made me think a lot about things like as far as the whole registration process would have to be different, everybody's temperature and, all those kinds of things that I didn't think about. A lot of them said their meals, their dining hall, the way they serve meals, all that was going to have to be different. Spreading, people out, having them go outside and eat, giving them to go or whatever, just some different things. And then one of the big red flags that was mentioned here is that if you get somebody that is sick, then in some cases the whole camp has to be closed down for 72 hours and you have all those kinds of issues. So basically after hearing a lot of that, I decided that our kids camp, which is normally 3rd through 6th graders, isn't going to go on as normal. We're still waiting to decide. Actually working with Pastor Joel on deciding about our teen camp because he's our teen camp director this year. And we've pushed the date to around April 30th when our governor is going to make the decisions. But that camp is also in July, so it's a little bit longer. Then I'm hearing other people like Nate and things saying that things are being moved to July. And so there's just so many different things. And then you don't know the ripple effect of all the families and what they're going through now, if they're going to allow their kids to go to camp, if they're going to have the money to go to camp, or they're going to want to get them out of the house. You really don't know what the ripple effect is going to be like.
Thanks, JT. I know JT and I talked last week, and he was mentioning some of those health department conversations and the other certifications. So I know as youth pastors, we're not usually in those kinds of conversations, but those are things we probably should be paying attention to if we're looking at renting our own campgrounds for small type situations, or if we're planning on going to a campground for a larger camp. Those are conversations that are part of it on their side that they're having to have about health department, about food, about check-in procedure, all of that kind of stuff. And so that might help us make decisions as well.
Very helpful.
If you are thinking of like other options, does anyone have any thoughts or ideas that you're thinking through? Okay, if we don't have like a large gathering camp, because I know on our end we've been talking about if we don't have our large gathering camp, if we try to do things like by church, day camp type stuff, what would that look like if we're not able to do like a large gathering? Has anyone thought of ideas for that, or?
I'd like to speak to that. I'm Pauline in upstate New York, so I'm in the New England district. However, it's 4 hours away to our district camp. So typically speaking, we don't attend the district camp because of the distance, the travel expenses on top of registration. Our kids can't do it. So I'm always looking for another option. And so this year we had scheduled to work with Word of Life Bible Institute up north and have them come down with their BI students and put on a big all-nighter lock-in. And so since their college is closed and the kids are working remotely for the remainder of the school year, we don't have that as a resource. So we don't have the students as well as the resources to put on something like that. And as of right now in upstate New York, we're still in that pattern as everybody else where we're not allowed to do even small groups of 10 yet. So we don't know what it's going to look like. We are pretty much dictated by what New York City is implemented. We have to suffer along as well. So I doubt that they're going to give us a little bit looser restrictions. However, I do see that some of the campgrounds, not the state ones, but private ones in our area are opened up for small groups. So could I possibly take some students, like a small girls group, and do less than 10 at a small local campground? That's certainly an option. And there's other places as well. Now, we are working with Dare to Share Ministries. We do 2 events every year, one of which is the Lead the Cause. Now, Lead the Cause is a national event that takes place not only in Washington, D.C., in Denver, Colorado, and other locations. Now, we were slated to go to Washington, D.C. at the end of July. Now, that sounds like it would be a pretty decent time for things to start loosening up and where we can gather together. But they made a decision, like many of you, well, we need to get registrations done. A lot of families are in dire straits. How many people are actually going to be willing to let their kids travel? So they made a decision through Dare to Share that we are going to change it up. And so this year, Dare to Share's Lead the Cause, which is actually a 1-week intensive training to equip students of how to share the gospel, how to lead other students in their schools and in their communities to leading their faith as well. And there's a lot of community outreach throughout the entire week. So they're actually canceling all the sites, and instead they're putting together this package where they can live stream a small portion of it. The church leader can also put on a portion of it, and the students can attend at the church in smaller groups. Now, the great thing with this is that if for whatever reason a particular area is still under a stay-at-home order, then they can do this over the computer via Zoom with the students in their bedroom. So they're going to have many different levels depending on which state has what type of order, and they're going to communicate with the leaders of the church to determine what kind of community outreach. Can I use the Life in 6 Words app to talk about the gospel to a friend? So different things that they can do in different contexts. So it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. It's going to be catered to whatever each state looks like and what you're able to do. So that's a really great option. We decided to go along with that. So the last week of July, we're going to be doing Lead the Cause with Dare to Share, just to get the kids together, hopefully, at the church and do some community outreach just within our own community and backyard. And then I think this is fantastic because now it just takes out all of that time and money that we were logistically planning for that big trip in DC. And now many more students can participate with that now. And instead of $500 a student, is $49 a student. So definitely worthwhile. Also, that falls into, that's the end of July. The kids go back to school in September. And in October, they have this big event called Live, where we get all the kids together at the church, and we have a 1-day live stream event with some in-house worship and other leaders coming in for an MC and talking with the kids. And then we send them out into the community with their friends that they've already established through Lead the Cause, and they're going out door to door collecting food for a food drive, and talking to people in their homes about the gospel. Now, that might look a little bit different depending on where we're at in October, but that's plenty of time, right? So we're looking at end of July, sort of launch night to commission the students who went through Lead a Cause to own their campus in September, and then in October doing the live event. And hopefully life should be back to normal by then.
Somebody else want to share some ideas that you've either seen or heard or otherwise?
Ashley Lee, Richmond, Indiana. I am with the Fairmount Camp in the Crossroads District on the board there. And we are looking, we haven't made any decisions like Angela was saying earlier, but we're looking at having a virtual camp for the kids just because of budgets being cut for camp and things like that. We just, like everyone else, we don't know. But one of the things we talked about was Orange is providing their VBS curriculum for an online virtual VBS. So we're looking at that for one of our kids' options. If you use Orange, it would be a great resource.
Yeah, in South Carolina, we're still looking at creative ways to do things. Obviously, it'd be best if we could meet in person, but that's looking less likely. But we're looking at, okay, if churches or youth groups are still allowed to meet, then they could meet at their own church during the day and have activities throughout the day. Somehow still divide people into groups, divide them into teams, and still compete in activities. Now, we don't know what that looks like, but still trying to have some of those games and activities, and you're just doing it in your small church setting, your youth group setting, and then whether you're filming it or getting it back some way, and so you can still compete against other teams and do stuff. We're talking about still setting up, just have one day we go and record all of our services, all the songs, all the preaching, and then just at night, I guess, premiere those on Facebook or YouTube or whatever. And still trying to have a camp atmosphere, even though, and still trying to, because a lot of our teens, we have a lot of smaller youth groups, and so connecting with other teens in the state is really important to a lot of them. And so finding ways for them to still connect through Zoom or different games with people throughout the state that they've built these friendships with over the years. So it's just trying to find creative ways to do that, even though we might not be able to meet in person.
When we had the discussion in Penn York, we automatically started with the first line of thought of you cannot recreate camp digitally. So we're like, all right, let's just wipe that board. Let's not try and recreate camp digitally because we're like, it's going to be weird and probably crappy, especially with the tech we had at our disposal. So we started the conversation, what could we create that's in this season that could be amazing for them and spiritually connect them? And pretty much all of us agreed it's going to be something where it's scattered but together, like the same idea Tim was talking about here. Which also, Tim, thanks for being from South Carolina, because I had no clue what I'm doing for my teens when I move there in a month.
Charlie, what are you guys working on? Because I know you and I have had a couple conversations, but like, what are some of the unique things that you guys are working on right now in this conversation?
It's kind of unique where we got the resources, with the production and all that kind of stuff, and so we don't need to go for profit in anything. We're keeping our teams together. So we have 7 ministry teams prepped to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to offer a one-day experience. If somebody says, hey, we want to do something at our church, and no overnight, no on campground facility type of thing, unless that was a one-day location. Bring our worship. This year we added Air Rally to our summer ministry team. So we'd bring the whole 9 yards, all the archery tag, all the students, about 30 people. We just go on tour, almost like you think of Winter Jam. Show up at a location, set up, be ready by 1 o'clock, do all kinds of activities, group games with all the gear we have, even some cool like breakouts. And then a main session that night with all the worship, the speaking, the whole 9 yards for free. It would just be a free donation. And we'd work with the local context. And so say, like Stephen, it's like, hey, we're coming out to your location and, this is what you had already planned. How do we work together and do it for that one day? So there's none of those legal ramifications of overnight, any of that kind of stuff. The second option is we're doing this for Fusion. We did it for Fusion. We're doing it for Never Too Young, actually. We're going live with Never Too Young May 1st. And it's a little bit more of a interactive version than Fusion, because we did Fusion. That time, there was no space to be glib or anything at that moment. It needed to be what it was. So we kind of got rid of anything that was a little silly or even that realm. We kept it pretty, worship centered and that contemplative spirit. Well, Never Too Young is going to be a little bit different. We're going to interact with more of the virtual games. So that event will be 1 hour, May 1st. We can do the same thing for camps. For example, if Stephen said, hey, will you be the vehicle to run a virtual one night experience? Or it could be, an hour every night for a week. We would go to Stephen. He can record and we'll just be the vehicle. We'll use our bands and all that kind of stuff, but we'll use the studio and the cameras, everything that we have at our disposal to promote somebody's local experience. And so if you wanted to make something specific, or Matthew, specific for Penn Jersey, or, Jessica specific, for Indiana North or Great Lakes, or, Fairmount, whatever the case may be, Ashley, it's like you can use our source to promote your event. And basically what we would do is design it and pre-record everything that we're doing already with you and create an event. And so we're keeping all of our students. We're planning legally these one-day events, and we're staying flexible. You see Shammy on this call. We're staying flexible with camps that might need support when it's open. So we're staying committed. We're bringing our students in. We're training online right now, but we're bringing them in the first week in June and getting ready to do all of these things through June, with the possibility of maybe going and supporting camps in July. But we're going to be flexible. That's like a 3-pronged approach. A virtual camp experience that uses you, not IW. It's not IW producing it for you. It's us working together. So it's your camp. And we use all of our resources to make your camp live with your people and your voice and your students, just like you'll see with Never Too Young. And the one-day experience, same thing. The beauty is there's no charge. So if there was an expense, it would be, having food ready for students that night. So we don't need money to do this. It's already fully funded. So it's nothing but a complete and total resource, Zach, if that makes sense. So those 3 levels of support.
Charlie, there was a question. Does that mean that IW isn't sending out our ministry teams?
We're prepping our summer ministry teams, and we will be ready to send teams as that decision is made. And so just like all of you, we know certain decisions will be made for us, and we don't know that answer yet. We don't know that answer legally. So we're planning as if we're rolling June, and then we'll flex with how legally it works with everybody's situation. So if a camp is allowed to exist in June at some place, and our legal says no problem, then we'll send them out. But we know that's going to be really tough. That's why we have the one-day option that's going to be all summer. That's why we have the online, virtual experience, like we did for Fusion and Never Too Young coming up in 2 weeks. So to be as best as a resource, and it's always been what it's about, is resourcing you, the church. Does that answer that question? So we're going to be super flexible with everybody, and that's we're already doing that. Shammy's already working on things that are coming in, and so we're going back and forth on how we can be supportive. The big thing is we'll be ready on either 3 of those fronts. So if we get a call and it can happen, we'll be there. But we're bringing our teams in just as normal. Even if they live on campus quite a bit during the summer, we're going to be ready to send them out. Like, this is going back to San Diego days, Zach, but kind of like watching the Navy SEALs train over in Coronado. I mean, the second we get the call, we're going to rock and roll and get out to wherever we need to be.
I think you're bringing up a good even mindset for us, Charlie, of like, and we've talked about on other calls of like, there's internal planning and outward planning, and like just even the way that we're thinking like, hey, like this is plan A and this is what plan A can look like. And then this is plan B and this is what plan B can look like. And then this is plan C, but like, and regardless of what your ministry model is, like, I just appreciate you sharing that much detail, because I think it gives us all permission to go like, hey, like, we all aren't sure what we're doing, but we sure can think creatively and plan some options. And dude, just thanks for, I mean, your heart for ministry has always been there, but dude, that's just a gift to the church, man. So I want to honor everyone's time. So if anybody needs to roll, I totally get it, but I also don't want to cut this call if there's more things to talk about. So, or questions. So I'm staying on. I just, if anybody's like, and I had a 3 o'clock, I got to roll. I totally get it, but I can stay on here a few more minutes.
Hey, Zach, I got a couple notes. Can we just put that email information if somebody's interested in this, how to get a hold of us?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So you could, there's a couple things. I saw Shammy was on here. Shammy, if you just save the chat, you can keep, like, you can just save the chat and you should get all that info. And then if they've private messaged you, Charlie, you would have to save that on yours, because it does, if it's a private message, it doesn't save publicly. So if you just click the chat, you can hit save.
I will.
And I know Kristen's taking a bunch of notes too. Anything else, my friends? Awesome. So here's what we'll do super proactively is we will plan, since May 1st seems to be the elusive date that we're all going to know what to do. Let's go ahead and all plan for May 4th, which is that Monday, that we'll have another summer camp conversation just to do it again, which leaves next Monday open for topic. So here's what I would ask you to do. We're going to stay on here another minute. If you could put in the chat a topic idea for next Monday, anything at all, or hit me up with a message or whatever. If you can put it in the chat, that'd be most ideal. But if you're like, I need a minute, I need to process. Some of us need a little second to process, and that's okay. That's all good. Hit me up, because I want to make sure that these calls continue to be what we want to talk about, not just something that's like, hey, we should do this. Like, let's all keep talking about stuff that matters. But let's plan on May 4th to do another summer camp, summer events as we're calling them, because so I think all of this information, no matter if you're leading a youth camp, a kids camp, a D camp, a women's camp, an adult, like all these principles. I mean, because I think even part of it is like, we're thinking about our VBSs at our local church. Some of us like have local church events, so that's why I wanted to call this a summer events, because the principles apply across the board. So really appreciate you guys. So again, and just I know a bunch of you were on the follow or the fuel stuff. We'll have another fuel webinar tomorrow. Tomorrow's with Anita, Dr. Anita Islak, my boss, and she's going to be talking through leading through change. One of the most helpful teachings about leading I've ever heard. And I'm not just saying that because she's my boss. There's that, you guys, if you've ever gotten to listen to Anita teach this stuff, it's so good. You'll want to be on the call tomorrow at 1 to hear Anita's teaching on leading change, because for the foreseeable future, all we're doing is leading change. That's literally what probably the next 6 months to a year, probably, if we're really honest, that's probably, we're going to be just dealing with a lot of change. And so I think this talk will be a really good fundamentals talk for us to kind of get our mindset around that. So thank you for putting something in my hat. Do you want to say hi to everybody real quick? Hey, working from home. Working from home. All right. Can I pray for you guys real quick? Father, thanks for friends and a chance just to learn and grow together, God. And I just pray specifically for each of these people and the unique season that they're leading in and the uniqueness of even this conversation. God, would you download supernatural wisdom, discernment, clarity, and I even pray for unity and decision, that the decisions, the leadership weight that they're feeling would actually bring unity to the people they're leading as opposed to confusion, that it would bring life as opposed to dread. And so, Father, we pray blessing on them, and Lord, that you would give them exactly what they need, both for their job and honestly for them even at home, with just as their family. So, Father, meet them uniquely. Holy Spirit, rest on them. We love you. Amen. 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 Love y'all. Thanks for hanging out. And yeah, anybody who needs to save the chat, save the chat. I know there's a bunch of stuff in there. And we'll see you I'll see you tomorrow. See you tomorrow at 1. We'll hang out. And that's my grizzly bear growling, apparently. So, all right.
Hey, Kristen said he wants to say hi.
Hi, puppy. Cute.
I've decided that it's like, if this happens again, I'm going to get another puppy.
We are thinking about getting a dog as well.
For health. I mean, we went on a 3-mile walk today. So she exercised me. Plus,
I love it.
For the money that you spend on a counselor, instead I just hang out with this thing.
Puppy therapy. It's real.
Puppy therapy is real for sure.
It is. I believe it. I'm